Julian, I heard she left.
Yes,
I always thought,
Vanessa. Chidimma Okoro is not a situation that did not work out. She is not a vacancy to be filled. She is the woman who took a bullet meant for me. She saved my company and my name and walked away without asking for a single thing in return. If you are here because you believe that what is happening between Chidimma and me creates an opportunity for you, I am asking you respectfully to let that belief go.
The Igbo say that a man who has wasted the rain must learn to irrigate. Julian Adeyemi had spent 2 parts of this story wasting what God sent him. He had dismissed it, humiliated it, used it against itself, and watched it walk out of his house with 1 bag and a bullet scar on its shoulder. Now the rain was gone, the ground was dry, and for the first time in his adult life, Julian Adeyemi had to learn how to work for water.
Ada's apartment in Surulere had a broken lift and walls that were not marble, and a sitting room window that looked out over an ordinary Lagos street where generators hummed and Okada riders argued, and the smell of suya drifted up from the corner every evening after 6. Chidimma had never slept better in her life. She was up before Ada most mornings, at the small kitchen table with her notebook and her laptop, and a cup of tea that she actually finished while it was still warm. The mornings were hers now. She could think in them without managing anyone's temperature or preparing herself for whatever the day's version of erasure would look like. The consultancy had started with a conversation. Ada knew 3 small business owners in Surulere who had been paying large firms too much money for advice too generic to be useful. Chidimma looked at their books for 2 weeks, identified the problems, wrote 3 separate reports in plain language that made each owner understand exactly what was wrong and exactly what to do. All 3 asked if she could continue. She said yes. Within 6 weeks, she had 7 clients. Within 3 months, she had 14. She registered the business formally, Okoro Financial Consultancy, her name on something entirely her own, and moved into a small, clean, shared office space 3 streets from Ada's building.
The herbal wellness line came later and came slowly, the way things grow when rooted in something real. Her mother's notebook, 30 years of careful, disciplined documentation of every compound, every preparation, every condition and its corresponding remedy, had always been with her. She had referenced it when the boardroom required it. She had carried its knowledge in her hands when Julian collapsed. But she had never considered that what Mama Okoro spent a lifetime building might have a life beyond the village. It was Ada who said it. That notebook is worth something to people who will never go to Enugu State to find the woman who wrote it. Chidimma sat with this for several weeks. Then she began. The Mama Okoro Herbal Wellness line launched with 4 products, a sleep compound, an immunity preparation, a digestive remedy, and the cardiovascular emergency preparation that had saved Julian Adeyemi's life in a boardroom. Each was tested, documented, and formulated to precise, repeatable standards before a single unit left her hands. The packaging was clean and honest, her mother's name printed simply on each label in a clear serif typeface, just the name and what it did. The first batch sold out in 11 days. She reordered, then reordered again.
She was not yet comfortable in the way the Adeyemi estate had made comfort feel like a standard, but she was building something that was entirely, irrevocably hers. And every morning at the kitchen table, she understood, with a clarity she had not felt in all those marble rooms, that this was what her mother had always been doing, building from the ground with her own hands, something that served people, something that carried her name forward honestly. The work felt like inheritance. He had known her since they were 7 years old. He had known her mother. He had been at Mama Okoro's funeral and had stood at the back with the quiet grief of someone who understood exactly what the village had lost. When he heard through the Eastern Nigerian community network in Lagos that Chidimma was in the city and had left her husband's house and was building something of her own, he called her. Chi, Emeka, I heard you are in Lagos. I am in Lagos. Are you eating? She had laughed for the first time in weeks. They met occasionally for lunch, talking the way people talk when they share an origin, without explanation, without performance, the specific shorthand of people who knew the same roads and the same faces. He was a civil engineer, practical and warm, and his presence in her life occupied the easy, uncomplicated warmth of shared history. Nothing more than that, but warm enough and visible enough to be misread by someone watching from the outside.
Julian waited 3 weeks after the boardroom before he tried.
He drove to Surulere on a Thursday morning, not in the Mercedes, in a plainer car without his driver, and found the building. A frosted glass door with Okoro Financial Consultancy printed on it in clean black lettering. He sat in the car for a long time looking at those words, her name, on a door, in a building she had chosen and filled with work that was entirely her own. He went in. The receptionist told him that Mrs. Adeyemi was with a client and was not available for unscheduled visits. He asked if he could leave his name. She wrote it down. He waited 20 minutes. Then the receptionist told him, with quiet apology, that Mrs. Adeyemi asked that he make an appointment through the usual channels. He thanked her. He walked back to the car. He tried a second time 2 weeks later. Same result. Polite, quiet, absolute.
He sent flowers once, a small, considered bunch with a plain card that said only, "I hope the work is going well." They were returned the following morning via courier, the card still in its envelope, unopened. He held the returned flowers for a moment. Then he put them in a vase in his study, not in self-pity, simply because it seemed wasteful to discard flowers that had done nothing wrong. He wrote a letter next, by hand, which cost him more than he expected. He could not delete. He could not revise without the revision being visible. He wrote 3 drafts before he produced one that was honest rather than polished. He sent it through Adeyemi. He did not know whether she read it. Adeyemi confirmed only that it had been delivered. She did not respond.
She appeared at an industry dinner in Victoria Island on a Thursday evening where she knew Julian would be present. She wore the emerald green. She found him at the bar during the interval and touched his arm and smiled, the smile she had been practicing since they were 29. Julian. He looked at her with the neutral expression of a man who has arrived somewhere new and is no longer pretending to be anywhere he is not. Vanessa. I heard she left, she said. Yes, Julian said. I always thought. Vanessa. His voice was not unkind, simply finished.
Vanessa. Chidimma Okoro is not a situation that did not work out. She is not a vacancy to be filled. She is the woman who took a bullet meant for me. She saved my company and my name and walked away without asking for a single thing in return.
He looked at her directly.
If you are here because you believe that what is happening between Chidimma and me creates an opportunity for you, I am asking you respectfully to let that belief go.
Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. The smile remained, but behind it something recalculated. She really did a number on you, she said. She showed me who I was, Julian said. That is not the same thing. He excused himself and returned to the dining room.
He drove himself. A plane-rented saloon from Enugu Airport, the roads becoming progressively less smooth and more beautiful as the city gave way to the specific, vast, red-earthed interior of eastern Nigeria. He found the village. He found the compound. An old man sitting outside a neighboring house who had known Mama Okoro for 40 years looked at Julian with the calm, assessing gaze of someone who has no reason to be impressed by any title or any car or any watch, and said when Julian told him who he was, "I know who your father was. I know what that woman did for him. Sit down." Julian sat down. What the old man told him across 3 hours dismantled something inside Julian that had resisted dismantling through every previous event of this story. The night of the accident in full detail, the months of treatment, the specific, extraordinary nature of what Mama Okoro had done with nothing but her knowledge and her hands, the vow the chief had made, the way Mama Okoro had received that vow with quiet dignity and gone back to her work the following morning as if she had simply done what needed to be done. Because she had.
Julian sat before the old man and understood for the first time completely that Chidimma Okoro had not simply inherited a skill from her mother. She had inherited a character, and he had spent 2 parts of this story trying to bury it.
He went to the grave the following morning, a simple wooden marker, weathered from the years and the rain, her name barely legible. He stood beside it for a long time. There was nothing to say that the woman beneath the ground did not already know. He stayed until the light changed. On the drive back to Enugu, he stopped at the only stonemason's workshop in the nearest town and commissioned a proper headstone. He gave the specifications carefully, the dimensions, the stone, and the inscription. Here rests Adeyemi Okoro, Mama Okoro, healer, mother, and keeper of knowledge. What she gave without measure. What she knew, she left behind in her daughter. He paid in full. He left his number. He asked to be called when it was installed. He told no one.
3 weeks later, his phone rang. The old man's voice. The headstone was in place. Within 48 hours, 3 people in Lagos had received calls from home about it. One of those 3 knew Ada. Ada waited 24 hours before sitting beside Chidimma at the kitchen table and telling her. Chidimma asked 2 questions. The first was what the inscription said. Ada made it from her phone. Chidimma read it twice. She set down her tea. She looked at the wall for a moment. She picked it up again. The second question was whether Julian had told anyone he was doing it. Ada said no. The village had found out from the stonemason. Chidimma nodded slowly. She said nothing else about it that evening. She went to bed at her usual time. She lay in the dark for a long time before she slept. She did not call Julian. She went to work the following morning and opened her client's quarterly figures. And the day moved forward in its ordinary working way. But something had shifted. Fractionally. Without announcement. The way ground shifts before something larger is ready to break the surface.
6 weeks after the headstone, Adeyemi called her. An anonymous donor had funded the construction of a small community health post in the village, to be named the Mama Okoro Community Health Post, to be staffed by a trained nurse and stocked with both conventional medical supplies and a curated range of traditional herbal preparations sourced from a Lagos-based wellness company. He paused. A Lagos-based wellness company, Chidimma said. Yes, Adeyemi said. He is sourcing the herbal preparations from my line, she said. He is sourcing the herbal preparations from your line, Adeyemi confirmed. She sat with this for a long time after the call ended. He had not sourced from her line to demonstrate something to her. He had sourced from her line because it was Mama Okoro's knowledge, formalized and made available by Mama Okoro's daughter, and there was no more appropriate source for a health post bearing her mother's name. It was simply correct, the right thing done for the right reason without performance. She found this more affecting than any grand gesture could have been. She still did not call him.
Julian saw them on a Thursday afternoon in Surulere through the window of a small restaurant, Chidimma and a man he did not recognize, leaning toward each other across a small table, both laughing, her face carrying a lightness and ease he had seen only in retrospect, in the memory of the few unguarded moments across their time together before his cruelty had made her careful. He stopped walking. The man was broad-shouldered, warm-faced, entirely at ease with her in a way that communicated, to Julian watching from outside, something that drove a cold blade directly into his chest. He walked to his car. He sat in it without starting the engine. He called Adeyemi the following morning. Is she seeing someone? She is not in a relationship, Adeyemi said. Beyond that, I am not the right person to ask. Who is the man she has lunch with in Surulere? His name is Emeka. He is from her village. He knew her mother. He has been her friend since childhood. Julian said nothing for a moment. A friend, he said. A friend, Adeyemi confirmed, in the specific tone of a man who would not be elaborating further. Julian ended the call. He sat with the information. He had spent weeks constructing an entire narrative of loss and replacement, and the narrative had been wrong in its facts, even if right in its emotional logic. She had moved on, not to someone else, simply forward, into her own life, with her own people, her own world. He was relieved. He was also, beneath the relief, more lonely than he had been at any point in this story. Loneliness built on assumption has temporary weight. Loneliness built on truth is permanent until something changes it. Vanessa made her final move.
At the annual Coal Global Holdings Leadership Gala, she had been invited by a board member she had cultivated over the previous months. She arrived looking exactly as she always looked and found Julian before the dinner began. She had spent the weeks before the gala constructing a narrative. Julian's marriage had publicly collapsed. Chidimma had left the estate and was living in Surulere running a small business. Julian had been photographed alone at every major social event since the board meeting. The vacancy, as she had mapped it, was real and present and uncontested. She opened with business, a contact, a London connection, a name genuinely worth passing on. Julian received it professionally. Then she said, "Julian, I want to ask you something directly." "Ask it," he said. "Is there any version of this that becomes something again, now that the situation has resolved itself?" Julian looked at her. He took his time.
The situation, he said, has not resolved itself. My wife left my house because I gave her every reason to leave it. She has since built a business, launched a product line, and been loved, brought in by the chief himself as a member of this company, in her own name, unconditionally, before she had even met me, because my father recognized in her what it took me 2 years and a bullet scar and a near death in a boardroom to understand. He paused. She is not a situation that resolved itself. There is no vacancy. She did not leave the space when she left the house. Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. She had come with a plan. The plan required a vacancy. She now understood, with the cold clarity of a woman who reads situations accurately when she allows herself to, that there was none. "You have changed," she said. It came out flat rather than warm. "Yes," Julian said. He excused himself and walked into the main hall. Vanessa stood where he had left her. She did not try again.
He sent one text, directly, on a Tuesday night. "I have done everything I know how to do. I am not asking you to forgive me on my schedule. I am asking you to come home." She replied once. "I am not coming back to the house, Julian." He read it. He put the phone down. He did not reply. He had no argument against it. She had said what she meant, and he had learned at considerable cost not to push against what she meant. On an ordinary Wednesday evening, he called Adeyemi and said what he had been rehearsing for several weeks. "I am not going to stop," he said, "but I am also not going to be something she has to manage or endure or wait out. I have done the work, without asking her to acknowledge a single thing." He paused. "If her silence is her answer, then I will accept it. Whatever she decides belongs entirely to her." Adeyemi listened without interruption. Then he said, "There is a matter with the chief's estate that requires both of you to be present. It has been pending since the burial. I have been waiting for the right time." Julian was quiet for a moment. "What kind of matter?" "The kind the chief put in place before he died, and that I am legally obligated to present to both parties together. It cannot be handled by proxy." "And Chidimma," Julian said, "she will come." "She will come," Adeyemi said, "because I will tell her the truth, that this is a legal matter pertaining to the estate that requires her presence, which it is."
Adeyemi's office on a Thursday morning. The same formal, traditional space. Dark wood-panelled walls, legal volumes, Persian rug, clean daylight through formal curtains. They arrived separately. Julian first, already seated when Chidimma walked in. He looked up when she entered, the same raw, unguarded expression from the boardroom, and she looked at him briefly, composed and steady, before taking the chair on the opposite side of the room. Not close, not hostile, simply her own position, maintained. Adeyemi sat behind his desk. He opened a leather-bound file. He removed a document. He set it on the desk and adjusted his gold-framed glasses and looked at both of them. "Before I present the provision," he said, "there is something I need both of you to understand about how it came to be." He folded his hands. 20 years ago, Chief Adeyemi was involved in an accident on a road in the eastern interior. You both know this. What you may not both know fully is what happened in the years that followed. He looked at Julian.
Your father was saved that night by a woman named Adeyemi Okoro. When he was well enough to leave, he made a vow to that family, and he kept it. For 20 years he kept it, quietly, without announcement. He maintained contact with the Okoro family consistently, support, correspondence, a presence that honored the dead without making a performance of it. He knew when Chidimma went to UNN. He knew what she studied. He knew when her mother became ill and she stayed in the village to care for her. He knew when Mama Okoro died. Julian was very still. Chidimma, Adebayo said, turning to her, "You were 5 years old the night your mother saved his life. He remembered that. He asked after you specifically over the years. He watched you grow from a careful distance." Chidimma sat with this in the way she sat with everything, completely, without rushing. When his own illness became serious and he understood that his time was limited, he made 2 decisions. The first was the marriage arrangement, not as a cold transaction, but as the act of a man who had spent 20 years watching the daughter of his greatest beneficent grow into a woman of extraordinary character, and who believed that bringing her into this family was the most honest thing he could do with what remained of his life. The second was the will amendment. He looked at the document.
He called me to the estate while he could still sit up and sign his name. He said, "Adebayo, I am bringing Chidimma Okoro into this house. Whatever my son does with that, and I know my son, I will not allow that girl to be without protection. Her mother gave me my life. I have been a careful steward of that gift for 20 years. I intend to honor it properly before I go." He looked down. The provision specifies that 3% of Coal Global Holding shares be transferred directly and irrevocably to Chidimma Okoro, not as Julian's wife, but as an individual, in her own name, effective upon the reading of this will. The provision is unconditional. It is not affected by the state of the marriage. It cannot be reversed, contested, or recalled by any party, including Julian Adeyemi. He left a note, Adebayo said. "I am going to read it exactly as he wrote it." He picked up a smaller piece of paper, the chief's handwriting, steady and deliberate. "Chidimma, you will not remember me from the night I lay in your mother's hut. You were 5 years old, and you brought me water in a small clay cup, and looked at me with your mother's eyes, and then went back to sleep on your mat in the corner, as if a broken stranger in your home was the most ordinary thing in the world. I have never forgotten that cup of water. I have never forgotten those eyes. Your mother saved my life that night. She saved it with her knowledge and her hands, and the complete, unhurried attention she gave to a man she did not know and had no obligation to. She asked for nothing. She went back to her work the following morning as if she had simply done what needed to be done, because she had. I have been watching you grow from that 5-year-old girl for 20 years. I have watched you become your mother's daughter in every way that matters, and your own person in every way that counts. You cared for her when she was dying, the same way she cared for strangers. You stayed when you could have left. You buried her, and then you kept going. I brought you into this house because I owe your family a debt I can never fully repay, and because I love you as the daughter I never had, and because I believe, I know, that you are exactly what this family has needed and never deserved. These shares are the chief's word, written in the only language that outlasts a man. Whatever happens between you and Julian, you will always have had a place at this table. Your father-in-law, who has known you since you were 5 years old and has been proud of you every year since. Emmanuel Adeyemi. Adebayo set the note down. The room held its silence for a long time.
Chidimma sat completely still. Her hands rested in her lap. Her eyes were fixed on the note on Adebayo's desk, on the chief's handwriting, on the words, "the 5-year-old girl," on a small clay cup, on your father-in-law, who has known you since you were 5 years old. When she finally spoke, her voice was entirely steady. "He remembered the cup of water," she said. "He mentioned it to me once," Adebayo said gently. "He said it was the first thing he saw clearly after the accident, your face and the cup." She looked at the note for a long moment. Then she looked down at her own hands in her lap. The same capable, certain hands that had pressed a leather pouch open in a boardroom and held a wound closed on a driveway and built a wellness line from her mother's notebook. She did not cry, but something moved across her face that was quieter and more private than any expression she had shown in this entire story. The specific, rare emotion of a person discovering that they were loved, specifically and by name, long before they knew it. Julian looked at the wall. The muscle at the hinge of his jaw was working. His eyes were very bright. He sent her school materials, Chidimma said quietly. Not to anyone in particular, simply the words finding their way out. Every year, before the term began. My mother always said it was from a friend of the family. She never told me who.
The room received this in silence. She knew, Julian said. His voice was not quite steady. She knew, and she never told you. She would not have wanted me to feel the weight of it, Chidimma said. She would have wanted me to simply receive it as kindness and go to school. A pause. That was my mother. Julian looked at her across the small office, at the woman whose mother had saved his father's life, whose childhood his father had quietly, consistently supported, whom his father had loved as a daughter for 20 years before she ever walked through the estate gates, and understood, with a completeness that had been building since the eastern interior and the old man's 3 hours, and the grave and everything that followed, the full, specific, extraordinary weight of what this family owed the Okoros. He knew you, Julian said. He knew you for 20 years, and he brought you here because he loved you, not because of strategy, because he loved you. Yes, Chidimma said. And I spent 2 years trying to make you small, Julian said. She looked at him. Yes, she said again. Simply, without cruelty, simply true. Adeyemi excused himself. He had documents to retrieve from his filing room, he said, which was true, and which also happened to require approximately 15 minutes, which was also by design. The door closed.
The office was quiet. Julian and Chidimma sat in their separate positions, not across a boardroom table, not across the formal distance of a crisis. Simply two people in a small traditional office in Lagos on a Thursday morning, the chief's handwritten note sitting on the desk between them. Julian looked at her. "I have one question," she said. "Ask it," he said. "Why did it take all of this?" He did not answer immediately. He had thought about this question, not about how to answer it well, but how to answer it honestly, which was a different task entirely. "Because I was afraid of you," he said. She waited. "Not of what you might do, of what you made me feel. You walked into my father's compound and looked at me, without any performance, no calculation, no management. Just you, seeing me clearly." He paused. "I had spent my entire adult life making sure nobody looked at me that way, and you did it without trying, without even knowing you were doing it." He looked at his hands briefly. "Everything after that, the humiliation, the exclusion, the cruelty, I told myself it was about power, it was about fear. I was afraid of a woman who could see me clearly, so I tried to make her small enough that her seeing me would no longer matter." The room was very quiet. "And then you saved my life," he said. "Twice. And I stood in my own study and used your village anyway, because even then I was still managing, still unable to simply be seen." He looked at her directly.
"That is why it took all of this," he said, "because I needed everything stripped away before I could see clearly. Your mother saw clearly from the beginning. You see clearly from the beginning. It took me the full cost of my own blindness to arrive at what you already knew, standing in that compound with your water pot." The room held this. Then Julian said, quietly, "Since you left, I came back to that house and walked through every room. I built it to communicate power, every object chosen for what it said rather than what it felt like to live beside." He stopped. "You were in it for less than a year, and it took every room of it standing empty without you.
to show me the difference between a statement and a home. Chidimma looked at him steadily. "I know you sent that text," she said. "I am not coming back to the house. I meant it when I replied that." "I know," Julian said. She looked at the chief's note on Adebayo's desk one final time. At the handwriting. At the cup of water he had carried in his memory for 20 years. At her own name written by a man who had known her since she was 5 years old and had been proud of her every year since. "Your father knew who I was," she said. "Before you met me, he honored my mother before he honored me. He saw both of us clearly long before you did." "Yes," Julian said. "And you are still becoming the man he hoped you would be," she said. "Only later than he intended." Julian looked at her. "I have a great deal of work still to do." "Yes," she said. "You do." A pause. "I changed my mind," she said.
She came on a Saturday morning, not at night, not in any dramatic hour, simply a Saturday morning, the Lagos light clean and direct through the estate gate as it opened, her small car moving up the driveway towards the house. The exterior light that had gone out the night of the assassination attempt had been replaced. The driveway was fully lit. Julian was at the entrance steps when she pulled up. He did not go to the car. He waited at the top of the steps. She got out. She was carrying one small bag from her own flat, packed by her own hands on her own terms. She looked up at the entrance and at him standing at the top of the steps and allowed herself for a brief private moment to feel the full weight of everything it had taken to arrive back at this threshold. Then she walked towards the steps. The head steward appeared in the open doorway behind Julian, his expression composed and professional, and entirely unable to conceal the specific quiet relief of a man who has served a house for 22 years and has been waiting for this particular morning. Chidimma stopped at the foot of the steps and looked up at Julian. He did not reach for her. He waited.
She climbed the steps. She paused in the entrance hall. She looked at the marble floors and the crystal chandeliers and the cold architectural grandeur of a space built to communicate power, and she looked at all of it with the expression of a woman who has stood outside this world and built her own, and is now choosing, on her own terms, to re-enter it. Not as a trophy, not as furniture, not as an ornament or an obligation, as Chidimma Okoro, with her degree and her business and her mother's knowledge and her bullet scar and her shares in the company and her name on the wellness line and the specific, formidable, unhurried dignity that had outlasted every attempt to diminish it. She turned to look at Julian, who had followed her into the hall and was standing a few paces behind her, his hands at his sides, his expression entirely open, waiting. "Show me what has changed," she said. He looked at her. "Where would you like to start?" She considered this for a moment. Then she looked towards the corridor that led to the study, the same door she had closed quietly behind her on a Tuesday evening that had changed everything. "The study," she said. "I would like to sit in the chair this time." "The chair in front of the desk," he said. "The chair behind it," she said. And Julian Adeyemi, the billionaire who had once brought a village girl home to humiliate her, who had spent 2 parts of a story learning the cost of his own blindness, stepped aside without a word and gestured down the corridor towards his own study and let her lead the way.
The Igbo say that what a man throws away in pride, he will spend the rest of his life searching for in humility. Julian Adeyemi had searched. He had gone to the eastern interior and sat beside an old man and stood at a grave and built a health post and written letters that went unanswered and waited in the specific, patient, humbling silence of a man who has finally understood that he is not the one who determines the pace of redemption. The chief had known this. He had known it since a 5-year-old girl brought him water in a small clay cup on the worst night of his life. He had put it in writing. He had built her a seat at the table before his son had decided whether she deserved a corner. Emmanuel Adeyemi had always seen clearly.
It was the family trait he was most proud of and most concerned about passing on. On a Saturday morning in Lagos, with the light coming in clean and direct through the open front doors of the estate, his son finally proved that the trait had not been lost. It had simply taken longer to arrive. The game, as she had understood from the very beginning, in a village compound with red earth beneath her feet and a water pot balanced on her head, and a dying man pressing 2 hands together and asking her to be patient, had only just been won. Not by Julian, by the work. And with this we have come to the end of The Inheritance of Virtue. Do not fail to tell us how you feel watching this beautiful story.